Good evening. It's March 21st of 2017. We're here for our regularly scheduled Brattleboro Selectboard meeting. We know that the meeting's been officially warned because we convened at 6 o'clock and went into executive session to discuss personnel matters. We've risen from executive session without taking any action. I want to begin by welcoming everybody who's watching us on TV, whether live or recorded. I want to welcome our BCTV operator, a member of the press. I want to welcome our ASL interpreter. Thank all staff members for being here, and welcome everybody who's in attendance. The first item on tonight's public meeting agenda is to approve the minutes from March 7 and March 15 of 2017. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion to approve the minutes from March 7 and 15, 2017. Any comments, edits, suggestions about those minutes from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving those minutes as presented, please say aye. Aye. And opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. The next matter is chair's remarks. Well, we've had our elections on town meeting day, and town meeting is coming up on this coming Saturday. I want to thank everybody who attended our informational meeting last Wednesday and invite everybody to come to the school district informational meeting. That is
6:30 tomorrow, or 6 o'clock tomorrow.
6 o'clock tomorrow at
6:30,
Academy.
sorry.
6:30 tomorrow at Academy School.
Caucuses at 5:30. School town meeting at 6:30.
All right, caucuses tomorrow at 5:30 at Academy School, and then a school district informational meeting at 6:30 at Academy School. This will be my last meeting as member of the Select Board and Chair of Select Board. I want to just say that it's been a real honor and privilege to serve on the board. My highest priority is to try to make sure that everybody's voices are heard in a safe manner, and that we make our decisions based on the best possible information. And I hope that we've achieved those goals. Thank you very much for allowing me to serve. Next matter on tonight's agenda is town manager's comments.
I don't have any announcements this evening, but just thank you for your service, and Dick DeGray, you for your service.
Thank you.
To the community. Really appreciate it.
Next item on the agenda is select board comments, committee reports.
I'd like to comment.
Yes.
I'm going to start the train of the, I don't want to sound like, oh, the goodbye train, but I do want to,
This is where I get teary.
yeah. No, I really want to thank David and Dick for being on the board. And I want to thank, it sometimes can be a thankless task, but I think it's a rewarding task. And I want to thank David for being chair for 4 years. And I'll never forget, I was elected, and it was shortly after I was elected that my phone rang, and I got this call, and there's this person on the other end saying Barb is leaving. And I'm like, first of all, who's telling me this, and who the heck is Barb? Then I realized it was David, and then I realized it was Barb Sundag. And, we went through losing the town manager, having to look for a new one. We went through finally the end of a 30-year police fire project. We went through sort of a up and down there with the town budget, and David's been the chair, and through it all. And I think we've all been lucky as a board and as a town to have someone who knows how to do the job as well as David did. And when you just said you wanted to make sure you were fair and people were able to express their opinions in a safe environment, and I think you've accomplished that very, very well. So I want to just thank you both, and I know I'll see Dick on the street, continuing the flowers, which, so I know we'll see you, but we won't see you on the first and third Tuesdays of every night. But thank you very much for everything you've done.
I would also like to share my condolences for you leaving. David, I'm sure you'll miss my wit and repartee. Dick, I will always miss, at the end of the day. That's his favorite quote. At the end of the day, how do you know? So I'm going to miss that. I'm going to miss, Dick, your your thoughtfulness and your steadfastness and your knowledge of budgets and the economy and schools. And David, I've learned a lot from you. I've learned to watch my words, to not ramble, because you tend to give me the eye, and I know when to be quiet. But it's been a fun 4 years, and maybe in the future you'll reconsider, and I'm sure that will never happen. But give it a shot anyways. It's like Dick keeps coming back, so why not? So give it another shot. But I really appreciate everything you guys have done, and I'm gonna miss you. So thank you.
I can second everything that was just said. I wanted to add the skate park to the list. We managed to unravel and re-ravel that. And although Barb's leaving was certainly significant, I think maybe more significant was going over to hand Barb a bicycle and not being here pretty shortly after we all came on board. So thanks for that and for keeping us productive. And Dick, over the course of the year, I've come to appreciate you more and more.
Thank you.
Not just because you're history and wise, but you're a good guy.
Thank you.
Didn't know you at all when you came on, and I'm glad I do.
Much appreciated. Before I say thank you to my fellow colleagues, I want to acknowledge Olivia Howe, who was actually on the front page of the Reformer, the UHS student who won a writing essay contest. And I think that's pretty special when you are national, yes, excuse me. So congratulations to her. And I also want to congratulate Tim Wessel and Brandy Starr for their election to the board. I believe that they will be good and thoughtful and deliberate board members. And I certainly let them know that if they weren't doing their job, that I wasn't afraid to come back and sit in the audience and take them to task. And I believe that just because you serve and you get off the board doesn't mean you drop out. I have been a participant for a long time, and I continue to do so. If not sitting there, then sitting out where the audience is. I really want to thank the people of Brattleboro for having faith in me through the years and electing me. I've been on both sides of the coin. I've lost and I've won. But I truly enjoyed my service to the community. I love Brattleboro. I try to demonstrate that every day in what I do and how I carry myself. And I want to thank you, the citizens of Brattleboro, for allowing me to work for you in this capacity. Last but not least, all my colleagues to the left, this year was certainly different than when I was here before. And you don't get everything you want. And one of the things you have to learn when you're sitting here is you can't leave and pout. I've won a couple of things that I tried to accomplish, and I wasn't successful on a few others. But one of the things, I don't take losses personal. I've never done that sitting here. If you do, you can't sit here because you can't carry the luggage because it gets too heavy and it knocks you down. So I want to thank my four fellow colleagues for their appreciation and dedication to the community, and we are fortunate to have people like this serving you on a day-to-day basis. So thank the four of you. And Peter, last but not least, I was certainly looking forward to working with you all year, and I enjoyed it immensely, and I wish you nothing but the best of luck in leading our town forward. Thank you.
Can you give me one more at the end of the day?
You're going to get one as we get into the
The day just started.
I know.
Next item on the agenda is public participation. This would be a good time for anybody who's in attendance who wants to say something about something that's not on the agenda to speak. Is there anybody who wants to speak to something that's not on the agenda? All right, so the next item on tonight's agenda is a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. Do we have a motion? We have a motion to convene as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Under Liquor Commissioners, we have an application for a festival permit for Four Seasons Media WTSA for the Brattleboro Brewers Festival. So if you want to come to the table and get some free publicity, because you're in the publicity business, so. Or you can just speak from the microphone, whatever you like. Okay?
You can bring a fourth chair.
I don't think he wants to.
Kelly, do you know how the mic works?
Nope,
Just talking to
I don't. Not normally, I'm not very good at it, no. Not on this
So
side very well.
if you just want to introduce yourselves, please, and tell us why you're here.
Yep. I'm Stephanie Larson, and I'm at the Brattleboro Brewers Festival. Kelly Corbiel, also Brattleboro Brewers Festival.
And Bob Gammon, also with the Brattleboro Brewers Festival.
So we're here to get a permit for our festival, which will be Memorial Day weekend this year. It's our 6th annual festival up at Bauback Fields. We're very excited about it. We have recruited about 30 microbreweries and cideries to come, so there should be quite a good variety to choose from. We have some great food vendors and a lot of community support, which we're super grateful for. And he was going to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, most of you are probably aware of it, but for those of you who aren't, the 6th annual Brattleboro Brewers Festival is the opportunity to introduce approximately 1,000 plus people from surrounding towns within our community, as far away as Boston, Hartford, Connecticut, Massachusetts, to come up and enjoy some educational samplings of a lot of Vermont craft beers as well as New England craft beers, is what we highlight. So, so it's a good influx of people to the community. Spend a lot of dollars, helps out a lot of the local hotels, restaurants, all of those smaller businesses, gift shops. It's a very responsible event with the committee, takes task very seriously as to what we do. And then the other important element that we offer is we also give back. So we also decide as a fundraising event which participant or person or business or charitable contribution that we decide to give to. This year we couldn't think of a better one to give back to a local entrepreneur who's just getting started. He decided to start his business in Brattleboro, Vermont, loves the community, and it appears he's been a great asset. He's got a great community following. Started selling tacos on the side of the road with a taco stand, and through his sheer tenacity, dedication, he's following his dream, and he's raising money to start a cart so he can, do it more professionally and do bigger volume within the community. So we couldn't think of a better opportunity to give back to the business community and actually reward somebody for their entrepreneurial efforts that actually wants to be in Brattleboro and loves the community. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
And then Steph was going to tell you where to get tickets and...
Well, we have a great band too. There's a reggae band called Stop Tito's Collective that's going to be there, and that's always a fun time. People get up and dance and have a lot of fun with that. You can get tickets in town at Hermit Thrush Brewery or at Whetstone Station, and also at BrattleboroBrewersFestival.com. And they're $30 now, and at the gate they'll be $35.
So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but that's what we're doing.
Thank you. Peter, if you want to just tell us, please, about staff review of the application.
Sure. So this is an event that has happened before, and it's happened successfully. So we know that the details will all get worked out. Most of the time when you have one of these before you, it's actually, the staff review is finished. In this case, we actually have continued communication occurring between the organizers and the police and fire departments. But again, staff is recommending your approval this evening. Both chiefs are here if you have any questions, but the communication's good. The event's been a success. We know that the details are going to get worked out in order to protect public safety and have a successful event.
Anybody from the board have any questions or comments about the application?
Just a quick one. It's grown every year, hasn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So it started out your first year with How many? Two,
I'd say maybe 200-300.
Yep,
And now we're hoping this will be our epic year of 1,000.
yeah,
And we're tracking pretty good already, so
that's great.
yeah.
And a lot of great sponsors from the
Yeah.
community.
Yeah.
We just got Fates Forward on today. There's sponsoring the fundraising event to, help Tito's Taqueria
Yep.
as well. So a lot of good community involvement.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board?
I want to make a comment, because I
Yes,
can't,
please.
I have to take every opportunity to say this. During my day job, we say that Brattleboro is Southern Vermont's destination for fine craft beer and spirits. So I'm so glad you guys are doing this, because it makes that tagline more true. So
Yeah.
thank you.
You see that a lot at the chamber?
I say that every time.
Is there anybody in attendance who wants to speak to this application? We're ready for motion, please.
Oh. It's here somewhere.
I move to approve a festival permit to Four Seasons Media, Inc. for the Brattleboro Brewers Festival to be held in the Familary Field on Old Guilford Road on Saturday, May 27th, from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m.
We have a motion to approve the festival permit for the Brattleboro Brewers Festival. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Good luck to you. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for the opportunity.
We're ready for motion to convene as liquor commissioners unless there's any further business.
Unconvenient.
So moved.
I mean, to adjourn. To adjourn as liquor commissioners. We have a motion to adjourn as liquor commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is to convene as water and sewer commissioners.
So moved.
We have a motion to convene as water and sewer commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Earlier in the year, we had some discussion about the strong financial condition of the utility fund. And the board asked that we have a discussion regarding the, give some particulars about that good, strong financial condition and have some consideration about the ordinance that we're in the middle of. We're in right now the third year of a 5-year rate ordinance. The question being whether we had done sufficiently well as compared to the forecast 3 years ago that it would be appropriate to either freeze rates or reduce the amount of increase as compared to what had been adopted in the ordinance and is planned for these next 2 fiscal years to finish off the 5-year ordinance. As you know from my memorandum dated March 16th that was in your notebooks, staff is recommending that you not change the ordinance, that we finish out the 2 remaining years on the ordinance adopted back in 2014, and then consider having a different adjustment, perhaps flat, or perhaps a different rate of adjustment to the rates going forward for the next ordinance that you'll be considering 2 years from now. The reason for that is, as set forth in the memorandum, that we have major capital expenses. We've done a really good job of bringing the condition of the sewer system and the wastewater treatment plant up to fully modern standards. We have the same task ahead of us with the water treatment plant, and we have other improvements that need to be made, including some extensive work in the water main system throughout the town. We have a conceptual figure of approximately $6.4 million currently as the engineer's estimate for the water work, for the water treatment plant work, and potentially as much as $5 million worth of water main work, although that number is very conceptual, very preliminary at this time. What we believe would be the best course of action for the town is for more engineering to be done during the year ahead so that a year from now, the select board can be making a more fully informed decision about proceeding into the future. It is possible that when the engineers have done a more complete scoping of the water treatment plant project, that it might actually not require $6.4 million. And if that price comes down some, then we're right on $4.2 million right now is where we expect to end this year. The forecast for where we would end next year is 4.4. If that water plant price comes down enough, it may be possible to proceed and have a pay-as-you-go program over the next several years to accomplish the things that need to be accomplished and not have to issue additional debt. However, it may not be possible to do that. It may be that the 6.4 isn't enough money and the number comes in higher. We don't know that because we have additional engineering work to do on that, and we have a lot of refinement that needs to be done on the scope of the water main work that lays ahead. There's a handful of relatively smaller scale things that also need to be done that are not part of the water treatment plant or the water mains, but those are going to be the big ticket items that we see on the near term horizon. So the bottom line is we have the model here this evening. If you want to go into a more detailed conversation about the history of these last few years under the ordinance and where we are and where we forecast going over the next couple of years. But the bottom line recommendation from staff is while $4.2 million is indeed a healthy balance, we're fortunate to have that healthy balance. It means we won't necessarily have to borrow money when we go out to do this next wave of big improvements. But we don't know enough information to make an informed decision about that at this time. And so our recommendation is that you allow, at least for this year certainly, and we would recommend that for the remaining 2 years of this ordinance, that this ordinance run its course. We get to the place that is forecast as having that healthy balance that can then be reinvested in the capital needs of the systems, and then make fully informed decisions about how to proceed with those capital projects.
Anybody on the board want to comment? Dick?
In your memorandum, you use the words eliminate or reduce. And I had brought this up, and one of the reasons I had brought this up, I had talked about it a year ago when I was running for the board, that we should look at holding the rate increases, not reducing the rate increases. John, the question I have for you, we have really exceeded the model in terms of yearly revenue that was set up when we first did the pro forma for the wastewater treatment plant.
The model is very conservative.
That is correct.
And so it predicts the ending cash balance on a very conservative set of assumptions, and we have, in fact, the actual amount of cash that we've ended up with has been higher than that.
And when Peter just mentions that we are looking at having a $200,000 increase at the end of this year's budget over last year's budget, most likely we will exceed that, correct, in terms of revenue?
It's not necessarily revenue, it's the cash balance
The cash
at the end of the
balance.
year.
Right. We have exceeded the number that we have on hand quite handily. I mean,
Yeah,
we were never projected to have $4.2 million cash in hand with the pro forma. And
Yes.
so my point is that there's always going to be a capital project in front of us. You know, when we finished the police fire station, we were talking about, I think we had a brief discussion about the highway department and their salt shed. You look at the capital plan and you look at the vehicles on it. So we're always going to have this, and you can say, okay, we need this money for these capital projects here. David has always talked about keeping the town as affordable as it can be. And one of the things that I don't think people think about, I certainly have, and maybe I'm off the mark, is that we put in this wastewater facility at $33 million. The users pay for it, but everybody who is a taxpayer in the town benefits from it. And the example is that when you grow the grand list, everybody in town benefits from that. But yet, and that grand list is growing by some of the businesses that we've attracted here, and first and foremost would be Commonwealth Yogurt. Mm-hmm. Now, they're going to be expanding, which is going to help this number exponentially. And so you have these people who aren't paying, they're not users of the system, but they're benefiting indirectly because as that grand list grows, it helps their tax rate. we're going to have 2 years of debt service, which is the highest on the police fire department the next 2 years. And I'm going to make a motion to freeze the upcoming 2 years at the existing rate that we are in. And is this the 16-17 rate or the 17-18 rate? John, I wasn't sure.
It is the fiscal year 17 rate.
And it takes effect August,
No,
It's already in effect. So
it's currently in effect. The fiscal year 17 rates are in effect. The new rates become effective July 1st.
July 1st, yes. And so my motion would be to freeze the ensuing 2 years at the 2017 rate, at the existing rate.
So we have a motion on the floor to freeze the water and sewer rates at current year rates for the next 2 years. I will just note a couple of issues that I think are procedural in nature. The rates are set by ordinance, so I don't think that a motion in that form is really capable at this time of affecting the result that you want to achieve, because there's a process for amending an ordinance, I believe, that requires a number of steps, including public notice and public hearing, followed by, there's got to be a public reading, and then a public hearing, and then a vote. So in concept, you could seek a sense of the board about not having a rate increase going forward consistent with the ordinance, but there's a series of procedural steps that need to happen in order to amend an ordinance. So I won't ask you to change the ordinance, change the motion, but only thing it would accomplish right now would be to be a sense of the board to begin working towards an ordinance amendment that have to be properly warned and then voted on by the newly constituted board. I think that's correct.
Yeah, that is correct. We would certainly, if a majority of you vote for the motion, we would take that as direction to prepare that ordinance and bring it to the select board in a timely manner so that the action could be taken prior to the July 1st adjustment going into effect. But you're right, procedurally, you're right, it would take the additional reading of an ordinance and then adoption of an ordinance by the select board.
And then since I was talking, I'm just going to say there's also, I try not to go first, but the other thing I'll note is that there's going to be FY 18 utilities fund budget presented for consideration approval by the select board April into May, and my personal view is that making a decision about rates going anywhere, being frozen, going down or going up in ensuing years really has to be done in the context of the consideration of that budget as a whole. So I'll personally vote against that for now, and then the incoming board can make that decision.
Well, Dick,
John.
on the face, I would love to vote for it. I mean, but you threw me off guard because now I need a little bit more information to see what the ramifications are down the road, or how this would play out. I wish you'd given me a call and told me that you were even suggesting this, and would have maybe had a little bit more time to think about it. Again, on paper, it sounds like something that could be done, but because it has to go through a lot more steps than just us approving it.
Let me say this, and because this is my last meeting, you win with dignity and you lose with class. Notwithstanding the fact, I talked about this back several months ago. I mean, at least August, and here we are at the last meeting. So I certainly am aware of what David was talking about. I am extremely disappointed that this came up here at this time. There was more than enough time to do the review of this and to have this discussion and to have everybody on record. And to be honest with you, I didn't think I had 3 votes, but I think there should be 3 votes for this. Because I think when you look at 6% increases, and there are other things that we could do to tighten up our system in terms of getting brand-new water reading meters into everybody's house that are efficient, and you don't have leakage, and you're going to generate more money just out of having those meters in the house. So getting this here at the last meeting, I'm glad I got to speak about it. Maybe Tim and Brandy, they're watching, or they'll look at this meeting, and when this comes up before them, maybe they can convince someone to at least bring it up again and have this conversation. But at some point, you really have to look at people and their ability to pay. And I said this several months ago, if you stand in front of that tax office and you go and talk to the people in that office when they're collecting their taxes, the biggest complaint that they hear about is the water and the sewer rate. And the town is benefiting from having that. So I'm in full support of what we did. I'm supportive of the pro forma, but I'm also supportive of saying, look at how well it's doing. We can hold back. I never asked for a reduction. And I look at what's in front of us in terms of connection fees and revenue coming in, and I think it is warranted that we could hold that for 2 years minimum as the debt service on the police fire moves forward. So I'm going to withdraw my motion. Thank you.
Can I just say
Well, we're still in discussion,
You're
Kate.
still in discussion. I'm just withdrawing my motion.
I mean, Dick, I was gonna vote no, not because I didn't think what you said had merit, because I actually am with you on we don't want to overtax people. It drives me nuts when we have a lot of money hanging around. But the only reason I was gonna vote no is because I didn't prepare tonight to make a decision. But I would love it if, when the next select board comes in, we're looking at the water sewer budget, to have that discussion. We can do it in context with everything else. So I don't disagree that we should look at how much we're taxing people at all. I thoroughly agree with that. But I just not feeling tonight I can make that decision in sort of a vacuum.
Kate, if you want to.
Yeah, I don't know, for Dick's motion and for the recommendation, I think I feel the same way about both of them. Like Kate just said, don't really have enough information to know what's the right, what's the right way to go. I do have a bunch of questions, and I'm absolutely not ready to decide on this yet because of the points that Dick raised, but also I want to go back and look at the capital plan and see which of these are already in there. Have we already taken account of that? And part of your recommendation is to do the consultant work to get the numbers more crisp. But we're looking at over $11 million, but maybe not. So it's not the information. I need way better numbers. Won't surprise anybody. The first thing that came to mind is what would happen if we did the energy projects right now? Would we have greater savings and have more money when we needed to do the water mains? And I'd like to see a list and the cost of the near and long-term projects that are referred to here. Holding the rate rather than increasing it, I'm absolutely in line with doing that, unless I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to make the wrong decision. And looking at these numbers, I don't want to have the next, somebody 5 years down the line when we're going to replace some main water lines or any of these other projects have to go to the bank for it if we can keep the rates at a reasonable not increase the rates, but also build up enough to pay for it. So I need way better numbers. I'd like to see which of these things can be done incrementally, which are we already accounting for in the long-term plan, and thanks for pointing out the difference between an ordinance and a motion, because I didn't realize we've never had one of these, so, at least in my memory, so I didn't know that. That's good to know. So I'm not ready to accept the recommendation yet. I need a lot more information.
John?
Well, I'm just wondering, procedurally, if we voted on this tonight and it passed, procedurally, what would be the next step? That you would start to
We would prepare an ordinance.
prepare an ordinance,
That would-
and you would actually look into it a lot deeper and have a lot better numbers and.
Well, not exactly that. So there's been a couple of different ways in which people have talked about needing better numbers, and I want to say staff is completely in agreement with all of those observations. That's actually the essence of what we meant to bring forward, and if that wasn't clear, then I apologize.
I think it is.
Okay, thank you. Because the first step of that, bringing greater clarity, is the discussion that'll happen here just several weeks from now, where you'll make real-time FY18 budget decisions based on the context of the updated capital improvement program for the utilities fund and the costs and revenues as we expect them to be, forecast them to be for FY18. So that's the very near-term horizon, and those numbers are going to be real solid. We completely agree with you that you need better numbers to make an informed decision about the rates going out further, based on what we don't know enough about for the major components. So those smaller components of the capital improvement plan, we do have a good handle on. We'll go over those in detail when we bring the budget forward. But this water main work, which is a larger scale effort that is anticipated than what is currently called for within the capital plan, and especially the water treatment plant, where there is some money in there, but we believe the money that has been forecasted for this over the years is insufficient to actually do the work that's going to need to be done, and we'll only know whether or not that's true by doing the additional engineering work to refine the scope and the cost estimate for the project. And so we feel very strongly that you need that additional information before you can make a fully informed decision. Having said that, the answer to your question directly, John, is if we were directed this evening to bring forth an ordinance that would freeze the rates, then what we would do is nothing different in terms of the analytical work about the costs and revenues that are not fully enough known and don't present a full context yet for the ultimate decision. We would continue on and do that just in the manner we already intend to. The additional step we would do is to prepare an ordinance so that it would be here in front of the select board for consideration to freeze the rates rather than continue on with the rates as they have been set in the existing ordinance.
Okay, so there really isn't a downside to passing the motion.
What we would do is the town attorney would be the one who would prepare the ordinance. There wouldn't be a cost to that. It won't negatively or positively affect the work that staff's going to do. So it's the select board's judgment as to whether you want to take that step now or whether you want to see the additional information before you decide.
Seems to me that we have been planning for water and sewer rates based upon long-term projections about performance in the utilities fund and based upon projected needs in those funds over long-term periods. 5-year ordinance was the last one we adopted. And it seems to me that building an ordinance that had a 6% annual increase in water sewer rates was absolutely a responsible thing to do, given that we spent $33 million to rebuild the wastewater treatment facilities of the town. That's a lot of money. You know, it really is. We're going to be paying that back.
More than 2 police fires.
Right? We're going to be paying that back for a long time. I would note that the town government, including the select board, has been just working intensely during the course of this last year. We plan for and have in place police fire facilities reconstruction project. We've renegotiated the collective bargaining agreements. We've settled significant litigation matters. We've done scoping work on other projects. And looking at the utilities fund and what the budget should be is something that has been unfolding slowly. The town manager pointed out when we were doing agenda setting that this was something that Mr. DeGray had raised, and I wanted to make sure that it was on the agenda before Dick and I were no longer on the board as of the end of the week. But I continue to agree with the town manager that there's not enough information right now for us to make a policy decision that we should be changing the existing ordinance. So I'm not in favor right now of voting to, I mean, you'd be asking us to vote in favor of freezing the rates in contemplation of then developing an ordinance to do that. And I don't think we have enough information to make the policy decision. And I don't think it's anybody's fault. There's been a lot of work going on.
Right, right. But the thing that bothered me a little bit when I was reading this is that, and I think it may have bothered Dick too, is that we constantly seem to have a lot more money in our, and I don't want to belabor this any, and I don't want to beat the dead horse, but it just seems like, with our, with our reserve and with this report, I mean, we seem to build these up pretty well and pretty quickly. So, I mean, that's the only point I'm trying to make is that, and we're doing it on the backs, of the people. So, that's where I have a hard time, stopping the motion on this a little bit.
Sure. Man?
Sure.
So, a couple of clarifications. One is that it's not 6% in both areas. It's a 6% annual increase based on the ordinance that was adopted back in 2014. It's for each of the 5 years of that ordinance. We're done with 3. We have 2 more to go. It's a 6% increase in sewer rates and a 2% increase in water rates.
Right.
There's one point that I thought just ought to be clarified because we've been talking about it in terms of 6. The other thing is I'm acknowledged in here and would readily acknowledge any time that we have this conversation that $4 million is a lot of money. And so $4 million is indeed, as I've described it here, a healthy balance. That's a good thing for us because we face such challenging capital improvements. We still have a significant amount of work to do on the water side. We've done a significant amount of work on the sewer side, but we've got a significant amount of work ahead of us on the water side. And so I ask you to not view that balance as something that has just built up and we're sitting on it. Rather that it's like saving towards a major improvement that you're going to need to do at your home in order to be able to borrow less money and afford to do the capital work that's necessary in order to keep the house in good shape. We have a 1989 water plant and it is functioning today, but we know it needs substantial work. We just need to better define exactly what that substantial work is. And what we don't want to do, desperately don't want to do, is dawdle at that so that we face a crisis where we do actually have a water quality issue to address rather than just a capital improvement to implement. And right now, without full definition to the project, the engineer's cost estimate for that work is $6.4 million. That makes the 4.2 that's in the bank not actually feel excessive at all from my perspective.
Well, I agree with all that, and and again, I'm going to just go because Dick removed this motion anyways. But it's a little like Chicken Little. The sky is always going to be falling, and we've always got to have all this money in reserve. And I think there's a happy medium somewhere, and that's all I'm trying to find. There's just a happy medium. That's all.
Further comments from anybody on the board?
Just a question, if we do nothing, then the ordinance stays in effect and those rates go through.
That's correct.
is there, without pushing back all the other things that we've given you to do, is there a way that we can expedite getting better information? There are 2 years left in this. If we don't have to freeze it this year, we can do it next year. We can freeze it for 1 year. I mean, there are a number of things that we can consider, and I'd like to look at them. So that was a big chunk. It's 6 inches, I understand, but still. I'd like to see if there's a balance. It's long-term planning. If you don't look at things over the long term and change them as you go along, then your long-term planning generally doesn't work well.
And that's right, and that's
This may be a time to reconsider.
that's the 2 steps that we were just discussing. So in the near term, we're going to bring you better information about FY18, but it won't answer the questions about the full scope of the water project or the other capital work. That's going to take an additional engineering engagement that we're actually going to propose to you in the FY18 budget to be able to hire the professionals to assist us in developing these projects into something where you'll have a really high level of confidence. This is the work that needs to be done, and this is what we think it's going to cost, and can make that fully informed decision about the rates.
Any further discussion or question or comment from the board?
That's one question which you might not know the answer to. Do you know when these estimates were made up, when these estimates came?
Pretty recently. Yeah, Steve is nodding. In recent months, I don't know exactly when. Do you want to?
So it wasn't like 5 years ago?
No. It's
Okay.
it's a current engineer's estimate. It's just conceptual instead of well-defined.
And they gave us the initial estimates, just a brush of what they expect the future capital costs to be. And that was also prepared because Congressman Welch was looking for projects that might go out for potential extra funding towards water projects. So it's very preliminary. We know that, we need to get solid numbers. And we fully expect with the board, as water and sewer commissioners, as you do every year, we'll bring a budget to you and you will go through the rates as you have every year and look at the capital budget and the operations. So the board every year goes through it. I feel comfortable to bring you those numbers when we're prepared. And we normally, each year, because we do get busy, utilities usually ends up, unfortunately, April, May, and we've prepared budgets as late as June, many, many times. So we'll look forward to working with you.
Thanks, Stephen.
Anything else from the board on this?
Yeah, one more. This is, if nobody knows anything about this, just drop it, because I don't have a lot of detail, but recently I became aware of an additional part of the sewer program to create an anaerobic digester for the sludge or the solid waste, and that's supposed to be either provide some savings or generate revenue or...
Are you talking about up at the solid waste district?
No, I'm talking about out here. Isn't there part of the sewer, there's nothing in that treatment plant to digest some of the sludge or any of that?
We produce sludge at the sewage treatment plant. The bio, I wish I could remember exactly what the terminology is, project that you've seen recent newspaper coverage about is something that's proposed to be done up at the solid waste district.
I can help with that.
Steve?
We currently do take in other waste. Commonwealth, you mentioned that. They bring in their waste. It goes directly into the digester to produce gas. We also take almost 2 million gallons a year.
There wasn't some other part of that, a future...
There has been
part of that?
discussions at times to develop another digester to take special waste such as Grafton cheese.
Oh, not to use
and
what's already
others.
there, but...
That's right. But that's only been a concept.
Yeah, and that's not part of anything that we're discussing
No, it's not.
as far as the part of our forecasted expenses for the utility.
One of the things, when the pro forma was put together, we knew that we were going to be able to take in outside septage. And the conservative estimate, I think, was $60,000 a year. Might be off. And we're tripling that number, I believe, at this point. And so it really has exceeded the conservativeness of the pro forma. And that's what I'm talking about, is that I don't know if the board is seeing the pro forma the last 3 years or 4 years when you're doing the water and sewer rates, that you're showing them the, and I say that you may have, I just don't know if you have, because I certainly wasn't watching the meeting, or I have seen it. So, again, I hope that the budget gets before you. So there is time, if there are board members that feel that you want to change the ordinance and hold it. Again, I realize that we're always going to have capital projects. You can't sit here and not know that. And, you know, having cash on hand has allowed us to, we're buying another fire truck this year, paying cash, $500,000. It is nice to have cash on hand. But at some point, you have to look at, you know, here isn't a reduction where you've got to make up the revenue. Here is holding the rate, where I personally believe that holding the rate, you're still going to exceed the expectation of what you thought you were going to bring in, just because of the added growth in our community into the sewer system. And that's all I'm going to say. And I hope that the next year's board looks at it sooner. And so there is ample time if the board feels that it wants to hold the rates. I certainly, if somebody was making a motion to reduce it, I wouldn't, but I certainly would support holding it.
I think you have 3 people that are going to be on the board that are going to want to look at this.
Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Any further comments or questions from anybody on the board? From anybody who's in attendance? Yes, Ms. Montgomery.
Questions. I don't have the documents in front of me. Our capital expenses, do they include the energy improvements of the water treatment plant?
The scoping of that project that we intend to do in the coming year will include the energy efficiency improvements that were recommended in the energy audits.
Okay, so we don't have to wait for the 5 years to be done to start those
Correct.
improvements. Okay, second question. The Energy Committee also has a lot of thoughts about the wastewater treatment plant. We believe that there are tremendous energy-saving opportunities there. Ever since the shovel got laid to rest from the reconstruction. I've had talks with Gary Swindler about that. He's met with our committee. There is a lot that can be done there. It was never, as I understand it, fully, properly commissioned. So I hope that you all look into that also, include that in your capital planning for that process.
Any further comments or questions from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance with respect to this matter? Ready for a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners?
So moved.
We have a motion to adjourn as Water and Sewer Commissioners. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Next item on the agenda is an update on the police fire facilities building project.
The West Brattleboro station is operational. Yesterday morning at 8:30, the fire department backed the first truck in to run calls from the station and is now fully operating from the new station.
And is the highway open?
It is, I drove over it.
There you go,
about
2
that?
things in 2 days, huh?
It was amazing. It wasn't this morning. No.
No, this afternoon.
It's supposed to be this afternoon.
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I threw a bottle off.
of somebody
No, I
driving.
did not. I did not. It was a can.
Just one thing about that, Peter.
Sure.
When they back the truck in, one of the first things that happens is that the vacuum system goes on the exhaust pipe and there were no fumes.
Right.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah, it's called the Plymouth system, and it really is
works, yeah.
impressive. As they just enter in the backing process, as they just get to the mouth of the garage, that goes onto the exhaust, and then while they're backing in, it's taking the fumes away, and then when they drive out, it takes the fumes away when the vehicle starts up, and it automatically releases from the engine as it leaves the station. It's really
Way cool.
Don't you wish I had one
Excellent.
of those?
I did. Chris, don't you write that about the throwing the bottle off that bridge?
so.
Too late, it's already in there.
So we're essentially done in West Brattleboro, but of course we do have the old station to remove and the site work to finish up. When the time comes, that'll be later in the year. And we will, as we've talked about a few times now, move to coordinate with your calendars and the committee members' calendars, the Police Fire Facilities Building Committee.
Steve said that the leak under the door is already on the punch list.
Excellent. To schedule the formal ribbon cutting and open house for the community to come in and actually see and appreciate the station. The other 2 projects, of course, have a long way to go yet. The police station, the reformer, is occupying its space. And the demolition is nearing completion in the rest of the building so that the construction can proceed for the police department. We expect that within the next 2-week window that demolition work will be completed, and they'll begin forming the steel stud framing in the interior of the building and roughing in the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems in the building. At the central fire station, the steel frame is now complete, and during the next 2 weeks, we expect roofing to be installed on the addition, masonry walls to be completed both along the exterior, inside that steel framing, as well as in interior locations where it's going to be a load-bearing wall, and also the electrical roughing will begin.
It looks massive. It looks huge.
I think it would be like to have another floor.
I know.
The report also includes both of the financial reports, includes the one you've been seeing every time that lists the project-related expenses that I've authorized, and then it also includes the overall financial report because we have paid another set of bills. And currently, the uncommitted balance for the project is $968,660.
Any inquiries from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance about police, fire, facilities project progress? Next item on the agenda under new business is the monthly financial report. John?
Thank you, David. Good evening, everyone. Included in your packet is the February financial report. And as of the end of February, we were 2/3 of the way through the fiscal year. And after making the adjustments for insurance, human resource payments, and the annual lease and note payments, we would come up with a 63.2% of the budget being expended through February. The utilities fund expenditures were at 63.4%, and the parking fund was at 66.8%. So the utilities were a little bit under budget, general fund was under budget, and the parking fund was just 0.1% over budget as of the end of February. The solid waste disposal fund revenues were 54.6%, expenditures were 57.9%, and of course, as usual, the February refuse bag revenue, the curbside collection costs, and the tipping fees for February don't get recorded until March. The loan report shows that we have $3,856,501 in outstanding loans. 2 of the loans were overdue, and 1 loan is in default and fully reserved. One of the loans that's overdue is has a very small balance. I believe it's $300, somewhere in that range. They are making payments on it. Both are making payments. They got behind, and they're not able to really catch up. But again, the amounts are quite small. Program income shows that we have $651,080 in available funds for grants and loans as of the end of February. And finally, the grant report contains a variety of information on 47 active grants and 7 grants that were in the application process as of the end of February. If you have any questions on any aspect of this report, I'll certainly try to answer them for you. If not, that's the report.
John?
Just a quick one. On the sale of the bags, how are we doing on that? Because
We're a little bit behind on that.
We are.
It has slowed down a little bit.
it has.
Yeah.
I thought it would have picked up for some reason.
Well, maybe it's because people don't.
People are learning to not.
Bringing up these bags.
Yeah.
Right, I
it's a
can
good
go
thing.
6 weeks
I know.
for a yellow
that's
bag.
great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It definitely has slowed down. So I don't think from the standpoint of the revenue that we budgeted for bag sales, I don't think we're going to get that number this year.
Okay, well,
It's good.
that's not a bad thing.
Give them tipping fees.
So in July, we might even see a bigger decrease in that, or maybe by August or September or somewhere around there. So that's good.
John, one question that's not in that part of the report, but is in the correspondence. The town has still not received payments totaling $96,195.43 from the state for federal FEMA projects or requisitions. from 2014 to 2015?
Yeah.
Any chance we'll see that?
We just had a discussion with the state yesterday, and the FEMA individual that's reviewing the project, the outfall pipe project, which is the wastewater plant project, that project actually came in well above the estimate that we had gotten from Hoyle Tanner at that time, which was what the project documents were based on. So they're looking at actually, we're going to provide them with a letter explaining why that project went over the estimate. And the state is then going to go back to FEMA with a revised estimate for that project. And hopefully they'll be able to close that project up and actually pay us a lot more than we've already filed for. It's about $60,000 more than what we had thought the original estimate was.
So if anybody's in the office at FEMA anymore.
That's right. They're down in Boston, and they're there, but it is very slow. And there are two other projects that are still open. And again, you know, there's not big money associated with them, but it's $100,000 plus if we get the additional 60. Well, there's $160,000 that's out there.
We can afford to be patient. We'll find something to spend it on.
It's the federal government, you can afford, you have to be patient.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the board or anybody who's in attendance?
Thank you, John.
Thanks, John, for that report. Next item on tonight's agenda is the Windham Regional Commission annual report and appointment of representatives.
You're alone.
Where's our other representative?
Yeah.
You never see her anymore.
Representing it somewhere else.
Hi, Rod.
How are you? So you have before you a memo that I prepared, which gives an outline of the ways in which Brattleboro participates in Windham Regional Commission and the range of work that the Windham Regional Commission does. And then identifies that both Elizabeth McLaughlin and myself are happy to continue as commissioners for Brattleboro to Windham Regional Commission.
Anybody on the board have any questions for Ms. Francis about either the presentation about the Windham Regional Commission's work or about commissioners?
I do, I'm going to take a minute to find it, but the first one is we contribute more than 150 hours. You two contribute 150 hours a year.
Across the three of us, Sue Gillian, the planner in our office, and Liz and myself, yes.
And is that part of, is there a, what do you call that, an in-kind donation relationship? That's just time that we put into it? Because
we commit.
So that they don't have to pay for a lot of stuff, basically.
No, it's just, that's what makes Windham Regional Commission function.
Right. Well, anybody else has
Still
questions?
want to do it?
No comment.
Good boy.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody in attendance have questions or comments? We're ready for a motion, please, on the commissioners.
To appoint Elizabeth McLaughlin and Rod Francis as Brattleboro representatives to the Windham Regional Commission for a period April 1st, 2017 through March 31st, 2018.
We have a motion to appoint Elizabeth McLaughlin and Rod Francis as our Windham Regional Commission representatives for the next year. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. And we close abstaining. That carries 5-0. Thanks, Rod.
Thanks, Rod.
Next matter on the agenda relates to solid waste matters. Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to give an abbreviated presentation because of the length of time we've spent on these matters over the past weeks and months. And if you want more detail or you feel like we need to discuss more detail at this time as you take these actions, then Patrick and I will be happy to describe it in as much more detail as you feel you need. But I will say just that dating back actually to a year ago, over a year ago, a process began by which the town was looking at more cost-effective ways of handling our solid waste, both collection and disposal. We identified a path forward with Triple T. There were things that had to happen at the Solid Waste Management District for the overall implementation of this plan to be able to go into effect. You took a major step back in December by approving that we make the change, one of the two changes that is before you this evening, which is to switch to single stream recycling and have our materials trucked by Triple T to the facility that Casella operates in Rutland. It'll realize a very substantial cost savings for the town. We, at that time, asked you, and you did, we asked you to take it as a tentative motion, as an expression of the intent of the select board to do what is now before you this evening for two different reasons. One was the reason staff asked for that very particularly was because we had work we knew we needed to do with Triple T, but even more so with the Solid Waste District, to work out the details of exactly how this transition would occur before you'd be in a position to be able to take final action for us to know that everything would happen in an orderly manner on July 1st. In addition to that, you said to us that evening that you wanted to do everything possible to keep the compost processing, the processing of the town's curbside compost in town at the Solid Waste Management District rather than being trucked out of town to a facility that would have been less expensive for Triple T. We worked together, as you know, with the Solid Waste Management District and Triple T and others to arrive at an arrangement where the town's interest can be protected in terms of a price that is equal to what we would have paid for the alternative that would have been less expensive for Triple T. Triple T is going to be paid $15 a ton to actually do that hauling, the more expensive hauling for them to keep it here at the Solid Waste Management District. And the Solid Waste Management District has decreased its tipping fee by that same $15, not just for the town, but in what it's going to charge for its other municipal compost customers. So we think that there's been really good teamwork around all of this. We think these are really good outcomes that are going to benefit not just the town, but also the Solid Waste Management District on the compost factor. And just, you know, in terms of the variety of factors involved, the variety of players involved, it's come to a good ending. That ending in terms of your official policy action as a select board would be to authorize me this evening to execute two different agreements that are before you. The compost agreement between the town and the Solid Waste Management District, and the addendum number 5 to the contract between the town and Triple T for the transport of our solid waste materials.
Anybody on the board have any questions about those solid waste related matters? Is there anybody who's in attendance who's got any questions about those solid waste related matters? We're ready, please, for a motion.
I move to approve a compost agreement with the Windham Solid Waste Management District and to authorize the town manager Elwell to execute that agreement on behalf of the town.
We have a motion to approve the compost agreement as presented, and to authorize town manager to execute it. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Another motion, please.
To approve the addendum number 5 to the service contract with Triple T Trucking and to authorize town manager Elwell to execute addendum number 5 on behalf of the town.
We have another motion to approve addendum number 5 to the Triple T contract and to authorize town manager to execute that as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed or abstaining? It carries 5-0. Peter, you had something else to say about solid waste?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I just want to reassure the public. I know you know this, but I think one other thing that bears saying so that the public is clear on this matter is unlike the changes that we've made at the beginning of the last 2 fiscal years, this transition, which will be a significant transition in terms of how the material is handled and will create a substantial cost savings for Brattleboro taxpayers, does not require any change in how individuals handle their own household solid waste and bring it out to the curb. So it's important that you know, we went through the pay-as-you-throw transition and the community responded really well and that was successful. We went through the every other week transition and that's been a success as well. We appreciate how hard that is for people to change their habits, but the community's really responded well to both of those. This particular change in this program will not require any such adjustments at the household level. You keep, diverting as much as possible into recycling and compost as you can, and bring that out weekly to the curb, and on the same calendar that everybody has become familiar with, bring your garbage out every other week.
Except that now we don't have to separate paper and plastic. When
You
the
don't
time
have to
comes.
separate, that's true. If you choose to commingle into one bin instead of keeping it separate, you can do that, but whichever way you bring it out, it'll get picked up and it'll get processed.
All right. Thank you, Peter.
Sure.
Next item on tonight's agenda is to review proposals for the Windham County Renewable Energy Program for consistency with the town plan. What I'm going to note is that at the time of our agenda-setting meeting last week, these matters were not fully ready for us even to review and fully consider. But because the deadline, as we understood it, for submitting them was coming up quickly, we decided to put them on tonight's agenda, even though we didn't have full information at the time of agenda setting like we were supposed to. And what we've done is agreed to allot 5 minutes each to each of the three people or entities who are making or want to make proposals, and then we'll vote on proposed letters saying that the presentations and the proposals are not inconsistent with the town plan. So the first one is Mr. Harvey's multi-unit nanogrid proposal. You could take the table or the microphone, Mr. Harvey, whichever you prefer.
George Harvey, I've got a proposal to get a grant, which would be actually the minimum grant that they give, which I need a letter of support from the select board, as you have said. This is for what I'm calling a multi-unit nanogrid, and I'm using the term nanogrid to indicate an off-grid circuit in an on-grid building, that otherwise on-grid building. There's a twofold purpose here. One of them is to provide resilience so that if the grid goes down, that circuit will stay live. The other is to reduce the electrical consumption for the 2 units in the building. The thinking behind doing this was partly based on the fact that over the course of 30 years I've been, as a result of storms, in situations where my electrical power went down for periods in excess of a week each. And the first 2 of these, fortunately for me, were in the fall, and it wasn't terribly cold. The latter 2, I had a generator, but the generator is extremely noisy, and running it for a week is difficult just to live with because of the noise and so forth. There is an advisory from the federal government, 2 different agencies of the federal government came out 2 years ago saying that we have to be prepared for grid disruptions in this country that would be in excess of a year. One of them came from the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, which was concerned about terrorist attacks. They said that the grid could be brought down for a year and a half as a result of simultaneous attacks on 9 facilities, 8 transfer stations and 1 factory. The other one was from NASA, which said that a coronal discharge was barely missed several years ago that would have brought down the U.S. grid for 3.5 years. And so I've been trying to get to a point where I could deal with the issue of resilience for a household, for a number of households at a low cost. I write for Green Energy Times, which is published locally and it devotes itself to energy issues. I write for Clean Technica, which claims to be the largest clean technical website in the world and gets visited by about 100,000 people a month. And in addition to those, I have a show on BCTV about energy. And the source for articles or shows that would make it possible for other people to replicate the same kind of thing so that they can have resilient power, reduction in their electric use and so forth at a fairly low cost. And it is really the educational purpose that is important in addition to the resilience. What I'm asking from the board is just the letter. There's no money involved from the people of Brattleboro.
Thank you, Mr. Harvey. Anybody on the board have any questions or comments?
David, one of the things here, completed applications were not provided for the town's review. Is that imperative for the board to have that information for moving this forward to, or?
My
Give me a
understanding
little
is
bit
that
of
they've
direction.
since been provided in enough detail, so that we can say that they are not inconsistent with the town plan. And they need a letter of support saying they're not inconsistent with the town plan in order to move forward.
Yeah, I'd like to verify that. So the full applications will be reviewed by the granting body, Windham Regional. There's a committee, I believe, at the Windham Regional Commission that's going to be addressing this. What we've received is what you have in front of you, which is the synopsis in each case and each of the three individuals appearing before you. And in all three cases, they were very rushed for time based on factors that have nothing to do with the town's process and everything to do with the grant process and the looming deadline that comes up this Friday, which is why this needed to be before you tonight rather than at some later date with more paperwork in front of you. Having said all that, we do feel comfortable that the review of the three separate pieces is sufficient for us to make a finding of not inconsistent. For there to be a stronger letter that might say, you know, ways in which it would actually help implement the town plan or other ways in which the town might be more overtly supportive of any of the three would have required a more complete review. But we think the process has actually been sufficient for an even-handed finding of not inconsistent for each of the three projects that are being presented.
So, I guess, George, because you're standing there, but this would be for all three people, was this a surprise that this was coming forward? To me, having an application process and getting all the information to the board should have been done way before the deadline to have this at Tuesday's meeting for something that you need for Friday.
A week from Friday, I believe. I believe it's a week.
So,
Is it a week from
I
Friday?
guess I'm asking you.
Okay, but it's before your next meeting.
I'm asking you, I guess, in a roundabout question, why we didn't have all the information submitted to the board
Honestly,
for review.
honestly, all the information is still not available to me. And that has to do with technical issues that come together with it in the overall design of the thing. There are a lot of components that go into this. And it's a small project, but as I said, it has a lot of components, and I'm still gathering some of that information.
Thank you.
One further clarification that would apply to all three is when we first learned about this, there was a little bit of time that passed. I don't think it really materially affected the substance of your question. But there was a little bit of time that passed when we were just figuring out what it was we were dealing with and why it was coming before us, because we knew it wasn't a town project and it wasn't a town grant. And that took a few days before we were able to determine that what each of them was going to need was simply this finding that it's not inconsistent with the town plan, so that there would be a letter from the town that would be supporting the application moving forward into the grant process.
Thank you.
Well, I move to approve a town plan conformance letter to George Harvey for his multi-unit nanogrid proposal.
We have a motion to approve the conformance letter as presented for Mr. Harvey's project. Any discussion for anybody in attendance or anybody who's on the board? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed or abstaining? That carries 5-0. Good luck to you, Mr. Harvey.
I can't wait to see if it works, George.
Next one is Mr. Montgomery's project.
And my proposal also probably won't be done until 4:45 on
Next Friday.
Friday, the 31st of. Here is one step further. On the front is a preliminary budget. On the back is another requirement of the proposal for energy generated, renewable energy, and greenhouse gases offset. And I'm also going to leave here on this desk of the true power brokers a more complete proposal, the latest version of it. So this project is being called the Downtown Brattleboro Building Energy Program. And the proposal is to do a massive publicity campaign to get as many commercial and industrial buildings in Brattleboro to undertake major energy upgrades. I've already approached the Downtown Building Alliance, Business Alliance on this, and many other organizations. I got a call from our state treasurer. She heard about it. Molly Burke gave her a copy of my proposal, and she called me and said, this is exactly the kind of thing we would like to help finance, programs like this. So I'm in conversation with a number of agencies at the state and regional and local level to help make this happen. The budget is $268,574. That includes incentives to building owners to help pay for the cost of comprehensive energy audits, which is substantial. It can be $5,000 to $10,000 per building. As we know through our municipal audit process, that's about what it cost. Salary for myself as coordinator of the program for a year and a half, and a number of other. Publicity and marketing is a big aspect of this program, so there's a budget for that. And outside technical expertise to be brought in specific to circumstances that will arise with specific buildings, whether it's pellet boilers or rooftop solar or what have you. So that is the gist of my proposal. I'm happy to take questions.
Anybody on the board have any questions for Ms. Montgomery? Is there anybody in attendance got any questions for Mr. Montgomery?
I do. I think I did read someplace where the endorsement of this is not anything other than moving this forward and would not compel any building owner to participate in this energy audit if they so choose not to, correct?
That's, our understanding is that
Our understanding
participation
is
would be
that
purely voluntary.
It's
No compulsion.
volunteer,
It's
yeah.
all voluntary.
I didn't notice anything in here. I certainly did notice that assistance with some financial support for doing audits. How do you envision assisting building owners and financing, looking at potential financing to fulfill an energy audit? Because as we know, they can be quite expensive, given the buildings that are down there and the age of those buildings. Have you worked on